We have the Royal Rhino with Deceitful Dice. We've also got more classic Burn and Radiant Typhoon and so much more. Make sure you guys smash the living crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. So this is a interesting burn strategy, playing the Royal Rhino with Deceitful Dice. So this thing says once per turn, when a card or effect is activated, even during damage step, quick effect, you can roll a 6-sided dice, then apply the appropriate effect depending on the chain link number of this effect. So if it's 2, this card gains attack times that result times 500. 3 or more inflict 500 damage to your opponent times the roll, or 4 plus destroy cards on the field equal to that result on a 600 attack point monster. So we can do some burn shenanigans in here with this little guy, and also the Melfi cards are going to kind of supplement and get us access into the Royal Rhino. You know what? This is freaking hilarious, and I love it. This is, I think, one of the what I would consider most interesting Genesys lists that I have seen coming out of the new format that players just want to try. Next up here, we have, now this is a classic burn strategy, if one ever actually has existed. You know, you're putting your points into things like Pot of Greeds here, just to be able to kind of get the draw power. Now your side deck is a lot more classical burn. Holy crap, man, this takes me back to the day. This duelist literally said, hey, let's test out trying good old burn, you know, rely on the wall cards to kind of get us set up. And then you're going to start to kind of grind out your opponent. You've also got the mystical tomatoes to kind of float into, you know, some stealth birds. And then you're just going to gently shave off your opponent's life points. I also think that, unironically, Gravity Bind might actually be a good card within this deck, just because you can actually get this up, and then your opponent's just going to be like, I can't actually progress the game in a meaningful way unless, you know, they've got some heavy back row removal, because, you know, you're just going to be chipping away. Next up is Radiant Typhoon with Runic. And you can thank Konami for just allowing Runic to still basically sit around in this format. Now, obviously, you know, when you don't have any of your, you know, abilities to bring out your fusion monsters, this deck is 900% more fragile than it actually should be. This is where you do get to see the Pot of Greeds kind of getting a nice chance to do your thing, but also do see Yield Quiet Life down here being an option for you to kind of toggle into. Well, interesting. In terms of just play overall for this deck, I think that this looks fine. I do see Sincana and Totem Bird now at points. The big 9 is, you know, got a little bit of point usage now. Gosh darn it, thanks Generator. I really appreciate the slap of the 1 pointer on my extra deck monster. But, you know, I guess. Next up here, we have Sharks. Now, you're going to notice, you know, Dominus Impulse still costing 25. But Dominus Spiral, on the other hand, still kind of getting off a little bit more scot-free. Nash Knight now does have some costing to it, but this is the style of deck that you really want to be playing Nash Knight in, you know? Because you're just going to be sucking up with this, and, you know, you're off to the races anyway, just to make the big C 101, or, you know, thereof for the extra free value. You're not really going too crazy with this. I also do see we are playing Exceed Import in here as a card. Okay. You also see the Trinades and the extra C counterparts doing their thing. But honestly, in terms of a Shark deck, this is pretty fine. Water still remains, I think, one of the slightly more viable strategies that you can kind of pick up and do okay with. Next up is Galaxy Eyes. Okay, well, first of all, cool to see that we've got a small package of the Shining Sarcophagus stuff in here. I mean, what, we're just playing this just to Gandora our opponent, or are we just using this as an extra level 8 to get an extra body on the field to be able to kind of control the opponent? Because if that's the case, then I can be all for this. You know, it does act as a very strong card to kind of help you out. So in the control aspect of things, I think that's fine. You do see one tech, you know, we are going with True Dragluxion. I'm interested to see why they didn't want to play 7 Tachyon in this list, period. That'd be something I'd probably want to readjust if I were looking at this list. I'd probably want to play 7 Tachyon just because, you've got a lot of searchability in this list to support it. Next up is more Runic for you. Oh my gosh. Now this is the broken stuff. This is where we get to see triple Mirage of Nightmare actually being very, very toxic. Now, I guess you can make the argument, you're naturally playing MST in this deck. It's going to progressively take you a little bit of extra time here to kind of generate some sort of advantage with this, which is fine. I think Konami's a little bit crazy for just straight, taking this off the list, but Mirage of Nightmare is a card that does kind of change up the format a little bit. So we'll have to wait and see if this deck ends up being the cracked sauce that we think it's going to be, or if it's just kind of like an off-the-wall one-shot that people are just going to be like, hee hee ha ha, it works, but it's not consistent. All right, next up here, we have Onomatomat with Sharks. So yeah, once again, we do get to see Surfacing Big Jaws here kind of helping out the Exceed base strategy, just so you can kind of do what you need to do. We do have the Dodo Warriors, which are going to take up a little bit of our points, so that's fine. We do have the Zexal Construction coming in with some point values. This is it, right? Like, these are our big point allocations. And then the Onomata pair as a one-of ends up being something that you're kind of forced into playing here. You also do see we do rely on the Dark Ruler no more as kind of that board breaker card so that we can actually try to passively win the game. But outside of that, I'd love to see a side deck develop for this. I think that they just slapped all of their points into the main deck and they said, let's go with it. But the realistic part of the situation is you got a pretty decent deck list here, and especially, point adjustments aside. All right, I can work with this. Next up, Doomsy sporting off Rhino. This is an interesting takeaway here because you get what? 1x, 1 sword, you get access into node. And then Hole Thruster, right? Like, those are the only real big things that you're tossing in here. You also can mode change technically with this, but 50 or 45 points. All of your points are going into this very small package of Rizal cards because you actually think that these are going to be great support cards. I honestly think that they are. I'm not going to take that away. It seems like if you were wanting to have some good consistency in favor for you, I think that this works out pretty nicely. But hey, I'm glad to see the Doomsy stuff is working out. We do get to see Rizal Cross being that stupid extra little annoying card. And as long as Eclipse Twins is going to be free, you may as well abuse it, right? Next up is Exorcister. God, look at these point restrictions, man. the Paxes now, the Ishiki-Himes, because, this was too consistent. And then, of course, the Mikhails got pointed out. But you also still see Daiguster Emerald still remains a card that does cost money. You have to remember, Emerald is still going to be the card that you need in the grind game. If Exorcister ends up having to grind out, well, there ends up being some issues at that stage. And, you kind of got to think about your deck building side of that. If you cannot consistently perform, or, your opponent just happens to have constant outs for you, you're going to have to find a way to overcome that. And I think this honestly looks very good. Now, remember, we do have more Exosister support coming. This deck only does get better with future developments, and I'm kind of excited to see where we're going to go from here. And our last list here is Rescue Ace. Who needs them there, Link monsters? Impulses and Airlifters did get readjusted to kind of counterbalance each other, which is good. We do get the 1 Fire Attacker in here. Going with the 2 Turbulences, which is good. Also do see we are playing the MST draw package in here because you want this stuff, man. Having MSTs be searchable and all of this extra stuff, I think really, really, really does help this deck out immensely. But actually you get to see some Exceed cards actually helping us out. So, not too bad, right? So please, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. I look forward to seeing where Genesys format's going to go from here. You guys have a good rest of your day. patrons. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.